We're live on YouTube, Anthony.
All right, thank you. All right. I'm going to go ahead and get started. Today is October 11th. This is our third negotiation session for the 21-22 collective bargaining agreement. We've passed several proposals back and forth and counters and have agreed on some stuff as well. Dr. Green, what I wanted to start with, if it's okay with you, just going through what we agreed to last time for anybody who is just tuning in. I see, are you looking for your stuff?
I have it right here. Thank you.
Sure, I'm not making stuff up. All right, so I believe last time we agreed to your proposal about using the online portal to get the materials for board meetings.
Yes.
We agreed to some clarification about our signing out during the workday language.
Yes.
We agreed to a slight change to the academic freedom language.
Yes.
And we agreed to the salary article getting in line with what the actual practice is.
Correct.
All right. Have I missed anything that we've agreed on already?
Not according to my notes.
All right. So did you want to start today, or?
Yeah, that would be great.
Okay.
I'll start. The first thing I'd like to say is we've had a small change in our team makeup, and whereas he's not on right now because as this just occurred recently, he had a pre-scheduled appointment. He might hop on later, but Mr. Bobby Pruitt from Satellite High School is going to be joining us in place of Mr. Burt Clark. So
got Bobby out of retirement, huh? He used to be on the team.
He said that. He said he used to be on the team. Well, he's back, and he, might be hopping on later this afternoon, but it all happened last week. So he had a pre-scheduled appointment. Okay. You had asked us to look at revising some of the language related to teaching assignments and duties that Dr. Fontan and Melissa Braun had discussed at the beginning of last meeting. And so we have made some changes to that language and would like to share it with you if you could give me the opportunity to share my screen.
Yeah, I made you a co-host, so you should be good to share.
Okay. Tell me if you see.
It's good. See it.
Okay.
Bill's gonna ask to make it a little bigger, though.
Make it so I can't see it on the screen. So you're gonna have to tell me when it's okay. Are we getting there?
Yeah, that's good. It's good.
Okay, because I don't see it on my screen. Again, this is under teaching assignments and duties, and we're talking about delivery of services to students and lesson planning and how we document, et cetera. And most of this is for those cases where, there's some sort of a challenge or we've been asked to investigate. And so that's the premise of what this language is, what the revised language is attempting to state. So the current language says the format for plans shall be decided by the teacher for the purpose of working with his or her students and shall include sufficient information for substitutes and evaluators. Teachers are expected to show necessary documentation for the students with IEPs, 504 plans, ESOL requirements, and other accommodations. And this is our revised language coming up. Such documentation includes a recording of when services were provided and for all ESC direct services provided, the time, date, topic of what was taught. The teacher service provider who delivers the service or provides the accommodation is responsible for the documentation. The documentation does not have to be in any set format or included in weekly lesson plans. And then later on in that chapter or paragraph, routine submission of lesson plans shall not be required except in the following instances. Currently in the contract is already the PDAP process, but the thing that we were adding is for teachers of students with disability whose IEP implementation is being challenged or monitored for compliance as a result of a state and/or resolution or corrective action plan. So that's the first revision. The second one had to do with teachers coming to meetings. Teachers coming to IEP and/or 504 meetings, provided they were notified of the meeting in a timely manner, i.e. at least 24 hours notice, are expected to bring appropriate documentation and to be prepared to identify and answer questions about documentation, IEP goal data, accommodation data, provisions of special education, and related services. And then the next paragraph, current language says there shall be no expectation that an IEP be written more than 1 week before the IEP conference. What we've added is except in cases involving attorneys, advocates, or litigation, which will require IEPs to be written 2 weeks prior to the meeting or IEP conference, provided the writer of the IEP is given notice 1 week prior. So that really would be a 3 week out. So something's happening in 3 weeks. The IEP writer gets 1 week notice that we need the IEP in a week, and then it's 2 weeks before the conference. And then that was it for the change in language. That makes then paragraph 21 become 22.
Okay, so I had a couple questions here. Yeah, if you can scroll up to the beginning there. So it says for all ESE direct services. The way I understood this from Dr. Fontaine, this would also include accommodations. Are you considering accommodations an ESE direct service?
Yes. So if you're making an accommodation, and remember the discussion that we had last time at the table was what happens if we have a collaboratively taught classroom? So we have 2 teachers in front of the classroom, and the example that was given is perhaps the general education teacher is giving a test and they make some sort of accommodation related to that test, shortened answers or a shortened test or time limits would be some of the accommodations that the general ed teacher would would provide and document. And the ESE teacher perhaps would be working with the student in small groups, and that would be something they would document. So whichever teacher is providing the services is required to document the accommodation.
All right. And I know the answer to this, but I think it's just important we say it on the record. When you're using the word recording, you're not referring to an audio or video recording, correct?
No, in fact, the word we had previous that was of issue was log. And so we weren't requiring that either. That wasn't, and if you go on to the second part of that sentence or the second sentence, the documentation does not have to be in any set format or included in weekly lesson plans. It just has to be something that the teacher can provide if we are required to list the accommodations which have been given.
Okay. All right. And then if you could go down again.
Hang on, I got to figure out where my cursor is. There we go.
I was just needed to read through that 21 again. There shall be no expectation that Okay. All right. Bill, do you have any questions for Dr. Green?
No, not at this time. Thanks, Anthony.
Okay. Does anybody else on the team have any questions for Dr. Green about this?
I do. I just want to make sure that I'm clear on what, is being asked here, because oftentimes we come back to videos to look at the discussion that was at the bargaining table. What was the thought behind putting the specific word at the top of the language where it says, I think you have time, I can't see it right now, but time, date. So time, date, topic. What's the reasoning for time there?
I believe the time was, and Melissa, if you're on here, you might be able to help with the time, but I believe the time was, for example, if you're in a secondary school, third period, or
Right. So
we were trying to get away from, I'm sorry, Melissa, I didn't mean to cut you off. Hold on one second. We were trying to get away from log, and we have a lot of schools that already use a particular format for recording this stuff or reporting this stuff. And we were just attempting to pull some things together, but not create a set format or make it be in lesson plans.
Well, I think I just have concerns about putting time, date, and topic, because I think that's kind of a moot point. If you have a child third period, obviously during third period, that would be when the accommodations are given. And also that completely takes away from being able to use focus as one of the tools to document, which many teachers are, because you adding a time in there is kind of ridiculous. If I have a kid in fifth period, that's obviously when he's getting his accommodations. The date is already automatically going to be on focus. The topic is going to be there because the name of the assignment is going to be there, but time, like, I don't think it's necessary to have time put there.
But keep in mind, that's at the secondary level. So there are elementary considerations. Well,
obviously if it's but that's not, I mean, that's not really a case either, because if it's, elementary has a schedule, they have a reading block, a math block. If the assignment is a reading assignment, the accommodation was given during reading time. This is just a fancy way of taking the word log out, but still keeping everything that's
so it's not
supposed to be included in log.
It's not. If I can speak to it, this is specific to IEP services. So if a child is getting 30 minutes of small group instruction, and the state, if we're in a state complaint, for example, which we've had, and they want to know when were these services provided, they want time, date, topic. That's where this is specifically coming from.
Well, then at the end of the day,
if they're able to pull it from focus,
that should be, well,
fine.
if I go on to focus and I see that my kid had, extended time on his geometry test, it's right there with the date and the title.
Right. But you're talking about
so
an accommodation. We're talking about the actual services.
Okay, well then that's different, because if his teacher is his geometry teacher specifically providing those services. So this is
I don't know. That's why we would need
this
that.
is global. Yeah, but this is global language that's going to apply to 5,000 teachers.
Vanessa, can I stop you for a second?
Yeah.
So I go back to the question I asked earlier. Are we talking about direct services, or are we talking about accommodations, or are we talking about both? Because Dr. Green, I heard you say both. Now, Melissa, I'm kind of hearing you say it's just for.
So the time, date, topic is specific to services. Whoever provides accommodations would need to include when those accommodations were provided.
Okay, so
that's a lot easier with focus. The other part is not as easy, because a teacher might pull a child into a small group, might pull 3 kids from 3 different classrooms, for example.
Okay. So and Dr. Green, correct me if this isn't the consensus, but so I think what I hear Vanessa saying is, if it's an accommodation, basically you'll know the time, date, and topic just based on the information that it's pulled from focus. I'm thinking even if I recorded an accommodation on the shortened assignment, it's going to have the date and topic, maybe not the time. But then Melissa is saying for more of the direct services, it might the the state federal requirements are actual date, time, topic.
Right, they need to know what was taught, when it was taught, how many minutes were
For
provided, that
direct
kind of thing.
services.
For direct services, and those are
Okay.
working on IEP goals. So oftentimes that will overlap with a lesson, but sometimes it doesn't, because that child might be significantly below, so they might be working on something else entirely. Does that make sense?
Yep. Bill, I was going to give you another crack at this to see if this is tracking with your wheelhouse.
So I know that we're getting hung up on the language, and I guess that's the whole point of it, right? I understand that this is necessary. We just have to find a way that's going to be less cumbersome for teachers. So, but we do have to. I guess we have to be very specific so that the expectations are clear. But I absolutely believe that this is something that's necessary for teachers to have and for the district to be able to document.
All right. Well, let us discuss it in caucus as well.
I had a couple more questions, Anthony, about the language. So down where you talk about routine, or for the teachers that have to submit the lesson plans.
Yes.
Okay, so routine submission of lesson plans shall not be required except in the following instances. For teachers of students with disability whose IEP implementation is being challenged or monitored for compliance as a result of a district and or state resolution or corrective action plans. So if you're requiring that teacher to submit their lesson plans, up above, oops, I'm sorry, that was my cat. Up above in the, where it talks about not submitting lesson plans and not necessarily documenting these accommodations or direct services in lesson plans, like they can have a separate area, whether they're using Focus or they're using, the actual IEP and an attachment to it to document when they're doing it. So if they're submitting lesson plans every week, but they're documenting their accommodations and direct services elsewhere, is that going to be an issue? Because you're asking them to submit lesson plan because I have the idea, you're putting it here in this information, you want them to submit lesson plans because of the accommodations, but it may not be there because they may be tracking it somewhere else.
So I think the topics are separate. I think accommodations is one piece of the information that has been difficult to pull when we're under some sort of requirement to provide the accommodations. I think the lesson plans are a different topic and not always, accommodations aren't necessarily written into the lesson plans. So I think they're different. And when you say every week, again, the routine submission of lesson plans is only going to be if there's an IEP that's challenged or monitored for a period of time. And I think, correct me if I'm wrong, Melissa, did Dr. Fontan mention last time that, we had fewer than, I don't want to say a word because I think I remember fewer than 10 that she said are being monitored across the entire district. So it's not all teachers submitting lesson plans every week. It's only for those that are being monitored.
Right. And I just wanted
And
to
upon
clarify
request.
because, sorry, you were asking Melissa.
Oh.
Sorry, Melissa.
No, I think it's more than 10, but it's definitely under 20. So it depends on kind of what we're looking at, whether it's OCR, state complaint, or like a district mediation resolution. But it's under 20 and at different schools, basically.
So that's why I just kind of had the question, because these teachers, those 10 teachers are somewhere under 20, right, are being asked to submit their lesson plans, but those lesson plans may not have their accommodations in them because they may be documenting those accommodations or direct services elsewhere, right? So I just want to clarify, we're putting this language in here and it almost makes it sound like these teachers are going to have to submit their lesson plans if it's under, a compliance issue. And oh my goodness, you submitted these lesson plans and I see your accommodations and your direct services are nowhere in here. So that's what I'm kind of confused about, why, you know, and I think that one of the main issues, and maybe we'll talk about it in caucus, is the differentiation between accommodations and direct services. And the other thing I just want to say, and I've got one more question about this language, we've got to remember, I just feel like we're talking about changing some of this language for 10 to 20 cases. And we've got 5,000 teachers in the district. So I want to make sure, or close to that, that we are being thoughtful, and this doesn't affect a larger group that's already doing what they're supposed to be doing because of the actions of a few, if that makes sense. And then my last question is, and I get it that typically within 24 hours is considered timely notice, but our teachers are, and I don't have to tell anybody that we have a substitute shortage. And both at the elementary and secondary level, our teachers are losing their planning constantly. They're either covering classes, they're either having classes split up and put into their own classes. So honestly, they might have lost a planning, and that's not really 24 hours notice because they may not have had time. I have teachers that tell me they have morning duty or afternoon duty. And so their time is just taken up. It's a crazy year. It's not anything that's in our control, but you know, I think we need to have a heavier discussion about what's a timely manner, because I mean, sometimes you get notified the day before that you have an IEP meeting the next day, and you don't have, you lose your planning, or you lose some sort of time, and you may not have the time to show up with what you needed. So, and it may not be because you're not doing what you're supposed to be doing, but literally you haven't had a second to yourself without students. And I'm done with questions for now.
Thank you.
Do
Okay,
you have, were you bringing us another one too?
I have a couple more.
Okay.
So I'm going to close this one out, and I'm hoping that the next one will be there. Okay. So this is a response to your counter, which you had provided last time. It was about calendar, and we had made we had asked for two changes in this section. One of them was the 3644 to move to 4040. And one of them was to go from 6 to 8 early release PDs. And you countered that. I am responding to your counter by taking away the 3644 request to go to 4040, and just leave that one be. And I'm putting back on the table going from 3 to 4 each semester of early release PDs, making that 8 throughout the year instead of 6.
Just, my counter was doing an MOA to add an additional day onto the contract.
Correct.
Because I think what's going on here is administration and teachers both see this time as extremely valuable, and we are fighting over the same amount of time.
Mm-hmm.
And neither of us really wants to budge on that, you know, because there's several other proposals that touch on early release where the district is being restrictive on those days. So I just, you know, I'll talk to the team, but I still think the better solution would be, at least for a year or even 2, because we're going to have the funding through the ARP grant, would be to add a day for professional development rather than fighting over these early release days.
Okay, and the only other one that I believe that I had was the hang on one sec, let me find it. The 2 years for language and 1 year for salary and benefits. You had countered that with, a specific sentence. Each party shall bring no more than 2 proposals to negotiations for the 22-23 contract. So my question about that is, what does 2 proposals mean? Does that mean two articles, two sections of articles, two paragraphs within those sections? What does two proposals mean?
Well, I assure you, my intention was not to, trick you into bringing more, but, each one of these is what we consider a proposal, right? Each one of these items,
Okay.
and some are longer and some are shorter. So,
So if we could put the word language in there, we would be good with that. So you currently say salary and benefits will be negotiated for the 22-23 contract. And each party shall bring no more than two language proposals to negotiations for 22-23. We would be, actually, that might help you, Anthony, because
Well-
by putting the word language in there, salary and benefits is two right there.
Can we, okay, I'm gonna hold off on giving you a response to that.
Okay.
Okay,
That's it on our side.
okay. All right, I am going to share my screen now. Can somebody give me a thumbs up that you're seeing the proposals? Okay. All right, so the first proposal was you had countered about the subpay / comp time for covering classes. We are going to accept that. So there's no change, there's just an accept.
You zoom in, Anthony.
What's that? Zoom in?
Yeah.
Is that good? Okay. Then the next item was about flex time. We are going to flex time going from 30 minutes to an hour. We're going to accept the counter you made to our proposal. We're not thrilled about all the restrictions being put on the early release days. But for the sake of compromise and negotiations and moving the ball forward, we are going to accept that, but we're, wondering or having trouble understanding why the district is so set on not offering a little bit of flexibility on those early release days, especially if they are the teacher's days. So we did accept that. Okay, the next one, you rejected our proposal about the schools with the 9-hour day. We had some discussion last time about perhaps a lot of this would be better suited for an MOA because the district doesn't feel that 9-hour day is going to be a permanent fixture in our schools. And if so, it's because the state is funding it and not BPS, although it's a little different this year. But the piece that we really want to see in the contract is this: in the spring of each year, teachers will be informed if their school will have an additional hour the following year. Upon learning of that decision, the district shall place a teacher at another school in the same position or agreed upon a position if the teacher does not want to or cannot work at the school with the additional time. We feel for the most part, this is what has been happening with the district. Leading and Learning has assisted us on some transfers for folks that could not work the 9 hours or really didn't want to work the 9 hours. And we feel that this needs to be a permanent part of the contract because it's a big change in work conditions to go from an 8-hour to 9-hour day. So we feel the rest of it could be worked out through an MOA like we have done previously, but we want to see this in the contract that, hey, you're having a whole new schedule next year. We're going to give you a chance to opt out of it if you want to or need to. Any questions on that?
No.
Okay. All right. You had rejected the proposal about members of the unit who are responsible for maintaining CTE lab equipment, such as automotive lab, receiving an extra 8-hour planning once per semester. We pared that down some to saying at least give it to them once per year. We believe, and our teachers tell us, that there's sometimes significant responsibilities involved in maintaining these labs. You got to remember, these folks are also writing lesson plans, administering performance assessments. Oftentimes they're working with community partners to do internships and the like. So although, yes, we certainly believe all our teachers should have more planning time, these basically are classroom teachers with yet another responsibility put on them. So what we're asking for is in 8 hours per year to give them a little break with these requirements. Any questions?
No.
Okay. Okay, you had rejected the proposal about the involuntary transfer with the annual contract teachers. We are going to withdraw that proposal. We are going to accept your counter proposal on comp time, moving from 24 hours to 40 hours, and 40 hours being able to be carried over, and 16 of which has to be used or may be used on a non-student time. Okay. And this brings us to the camera proposal. You had countered, we're countering your counter. I guess that makes sense. So I tried to address some of your concerns in this, but as far as the first piece, every effort shall be made not to place a video and or recording device with direct view of a teacher desk. Exceptions may be made for safety if there's no other possible location for the device to fully cover an area. With that, we simply, we couldn't come up with a different way of explaining a direct view of a teacher desk. We just don't believe that those cameras, which are there for security measures, need to be able to see the keystrokes on a teacher's computer all day long, or what they're writing, or who they're texting or calling. It's just it's a lot. It's a bit much, and I believe that most individuals would not want would not want to feel the presence of a camera behind their head all day long. All right, now the second part, the J1, any recordings captured from video and or audio recordings cannot be used in a teacher evaluation unless the recording is part of an investigative file that results in disciplinary action. So it's trying to respond to your concerns about absolutes. I do think it's fair that if it, is part of a disciplinary action, then yes, you can use it in evaluation, but not just, hey, the camera's recording Bill Perlman, let's see what he's up to. Hey, his students don't look like they're engaged, and he's not using technology. And so that was more of our concern. So I hope we addressed your concern with that. Video and or audio recordings may not be viewed synchronously with the intention to discipline a member of the bargaining unit. I did leave that because we believe that's the current practice, and that's what this proposal is about, is just putting the current practice in place to build some parameters for cameras in the areas they're being used. And administrators may use recorded materials as part of the investigative process when requested from Brevard Public Schools District Security. Once again, we believe that is the practice, so we've left that in. So hopefully, explained ourselves better there, and addressed at least one of your concerns. I know your other concern was with the phrase direct view. I just don't know really. We sat around and brainstormed for like 30 minutes and couldn't think of another way to put it.
Can I say something about 2A?
Yes.
So in just having discussion with the people that you referred me to, that you had discussion with, I think there was a misunderstanding about administrators' ability to view cameras. And I wasn't in those meetings, so I'm just saying what I've heard you say, and then I'm saying how they've clarified what they thought they were saying. The issue with cameras is, and the recordings, the recorded materials that come from cameras, is they are part of the district security system. No one outside of Brevard Public Schools administrative staff can get copies of those without a subpoena. Administrators that have cameras in their building can pull snippets of those cameras anytime they want. They don't have to go through district security to get access to their own cameras. It's those people outside of Brevard Public Schools that would have no access to district security protocols and would have to go through the subpoena process. So I don't know where the misunderstanding or the confusion or the misinterpretation came in, but administrators at a building do not have to request recorded materials from cameras in that building from our district security folks.
Kyle, did you want to comment on that?
Yeah, I just want to say, I know this is a little hard because this is two conversations we've had separately, but no, there was no miscommunication about what was said. I actually have the notes. It was explained to us that administrators do not have the ability to, rewind and fast forward and all that stuff from their school site. And they have to do that in connection with reaching out to district security. What you're explaining,
that's different than what you're saying on that paper. What you just said that you read from your notes is not what that says on that paper. That paper right there, it says administrators may use recorded materials when requested from Brevard Public Schools District Security. And what I'm saying is they don't have to make a request to Brevard Public Schools District Security.
Well, I'm guessing you didn't hear what I just said, because what I was saying is we were told that administrators do not have the ability to rewind, fast forward, and grab snippets from the cameras without assistance from district security.
I did hear that. And I'm saying what you just said is not what you wrote on that paper right there. It doesn't say administrators.
No offense, Dr. Green. Maybe I'm in a twilight zone, but I'm very confused right now. We were in a meeting. We were told administrators do not have the ability to review recorded material. We were told that they can view it live. If they want to view it, record it, and ask for the snippet, they have to work with district security. I believe the language says administrators may use recorded materials as part of the investigative process when requested from Brevard Public Schools District Security. I don't see any difference in what I'm saying now and what that language says.
I was hearing fast forward, rewind, et cetera, et cetera.
Well, it's the same thing. I mean,
he's saying hone in on the word recorded.
I mean, what was it? And maybe we're wrong. So I guess what you're saying is we're wrong, Dr. Green. I mean, there's two administrators on here right now, I think. Do they have the ability to pull snippets without the assistance of district security?
Jason, I see you shaking your head.
We do. Everything is recorded and stays. I'm not sure how long it stays in the batch for, but I can go back days and view cameras. It is recorded.
Well, that was not how it was explained to us, was it, Anthony?
No.
So I'm sorry, I wasn't in those meetings. I'm just telling you, I double backed with those people and they, what I said, it must have been a miscommunication, or because they said they were speaking about people outside of our district.
So that part is true. If it comes from outside the police or something, it has to go through district security to get a subpoena to see any of that footage.
So if Dr. Green's okay with this, Jason, like if you had a parent that called in 2 days later and said there was an incident with a student, how do you go about that? Do you just go to the video right away? Like, is there a process for that?
I don't think there's an established process. I mean, like any investigation, I'm going to gather details and facts from the teacher's point of view, any witnesses in the area and so forth with that. I mean, yes, that would be an extra tool, I guess, to utilize and see what's what.
So I think there's some confusion there, Dr. Green, because I do understand what you're talking about, the outside agencies, because they did explain that as well. But we were not under the impression that administrators could pull snippets without assistance from district security.
Okay, you can go on, Anthony.
All right. All right, so you had countered the drug-free workplace, and we're offering a counter to that. Okay. So we've added in, you had if termination occurs, and I've struck through if termination occurs, and it just reads the Brevard Federation of Teachers may utilize the terms in Article 4 of this agreement to grieve the termination, discipline, or reasonable suspicion as defined below. Now, from what I've heard through several of these board meetings, I don't know. I believe it's still possible to end up with discipline, not termination, in certain instances. So we want to be able to grieve that. But a really important value we have with this proposal is to be able to grieve reasonable suspicion, as well as make sure everybody's clear about reasonable suspicion. So we have here reasonable suspicion, the reasonable belief that an employee is using or has used drugs in violation of this policy, drawn from specific and objective and articulable facts and reasonable inferences drawn from those facts in light of experience concerning appearance, behavior, speech, or body odors of the employee. And B, reasonable suspicion drug testing shall not be required except upon the recommendation of a supervisor who has at least one level of supervision higher than the immediate supervisor of the employee. Among other things, such facts and inferences are based upon number one, observable phenomena while at work, such as direct observation of drug use or of physical symptoms or manifestations of being under the influence of a drug. Two, abnormal conduct or erratic behavior while at work or significant deterioration in work performance. Three, a report of drug use provided by a reliable and credible source, which has been independently corroborated. Four, evidence that the individual has tampered with a drug test during employment with the current employer. Five, information that an employee has caused or contributed to an accident while at work shall be the only criteria for post-accident testing. Now, and then six, evidence that the employee has used, possessed, sold, solicited, or transferred drugs while at work or while on the employer's premises or while operating the employer's vehicle, machinery, or equipment. I want to point out that these 6 criteria here, except for one little phrase, are directly from state statute. This is what state statute says the school board's allowed to, when the school board's allowed to drug test based on reasonable suspicion. I mean, it is word for word, except for this phrase right here, shall be, number 5, shall be the only criteria for post-accident testing. I've added that in. So information that employee has caused or contributed to an accident while at work, that's directly from the state statute, shall be the only criteria for post-accident testing is what I've added on. And once again, we go back to, bee stings. are not, according to state statute, and I will give it to you if somebody is throwing, rocks at the wasp nest, I'll give you that one. But, a bee flies up and stings somebody, that is not, according to state statute, criteria for a drug test. I would argue that based on the state statute, a student with disabilities biting a teacher is not subject to reasonable suspicion drug testing, and then basing this on state statute. Okay. And then the other part that is an important value that we have in this, we've pared down the proposal significantly, is an expedited grievance for reasonable suspicion testing. I don't think we've changed any of that from the last proposal. Kyle, we didn't change any of that, did we?
No, I do not believe we did.
Yeah, so I don't want to go through the whole thing again, but we believe that, just to sum up, if there is a reasonable suspicion test within 24 hours, there should be a step 3 grievance, or it shall be scheduled within 24 hours. So we can determine if that was a valid reason for a drug test or not.
Anthony, I just want to add that, at the last bargaining, there was some talk about workman's comp and the insurance rebate that the district receives. And we did ask for, that information to be shared with us. And, we never got anything, but we did do some research, and we found the form that's required for workman's comp, and it actually doesn't have post-accident screening on it. It only has reasonable suspicion testing. We also went and looked at the workman's comp administrative law and all the supporting documents for workman's comp, and it always refers back to the state statute. The state statute does not list post-accident screening. The state statute lists it as reasonable suspicion, and it truly is what Anthony read on number 5 is what is listed on the workman's comp. It's listed on and I also want to state the sheet that the district needs to submit for their 5% rebate on workman's comp insurance is a half-page form with 4 blocks that it checks. It doesn't have to define its drug-free workplace requirement. It just has to say we meet these 4 requirements. One of the requirements is a pre-employment screening. One of the requirements is reasonable suspicion. One of the requirements is if somebody comes back to work, they are screened. And then one of the requirements is if somebody goes to the rehab, they are screened. That is from workman's comp form. That is the administrative law that we could find when we did our own research, Dr. Green.
Okay.
Any questions?
No.
Okay. Uh-oh.
And Antonia or Rosemary, do you have any questions?
I don't, thank you.
No, not at this time.
Okay. I as far as our parental leave, you guys had you had countered with the removal of this sick leave buyback, which we appreciate, but first of all, I'm going to brag on this start of this parental leave that we instituted last year is such an awesome thing that our district is offering it, and we want to keep moving it forward. Now that we have some numbers available, we did some research on that, came in under projection as far as what the district anticipated to spend and what we actually spent. It ended up costing the district $84,000 last year, and some of that we can argue if they were actual costs, because we believe that some of these folks didn't require substitutes and so on. So you guys have rejected that, and we're putting the proposal back, a new proposal, and we're asking for 15 days of paid parental leave. That would be a really solid beginning to a parental leave policy like no other in any school district, and can be another thing to recruit and retain teachers here. But, I had mentioned last time that we hadn't had the public record at the time we wrote the proposal. So we've, based on that, we believe that the district can easily move that from 5 to 15 for
So could
very
I-
little cost.
Could I say, Anthony, you had mentioned last time that you thought we budgeted 300,000 for that. If you go
Yeah.
back to last year's final sheet that we TA'd on the salary, we budgeted 115. And so the difference between the 100 and the 115 and the 80 some was 31. We were $31,000 off of that budget. So I just wanted to point that out. We did not budget 300,000, nor was that on the sheet that we TA'd last
Yes. Yeah,
last round of bargaining.
Correct. I'm not disagreeing with that. We did find that as well. But still want to point out that, $31,000, I mean, that's still not a numbers guy, but 25% difference there. I mean, that's pretty substantial. So we didn't hit the
But
budget.
you tripled your thing here.
Double, yeah. So we went from 5 to 10 to 15. Yep. Okay. Yeah. Any more questions on that?
No.
Okay. All right. This thing keeps getting messed up. It's driving me nuts. Okay. As far as the marathon clinics, we're gonna offer a counter. I mean, honestly, we're still not thrilled with this. We think it doesn't quite do what we want it to do, which is to steer people to our well care centers to save us and our plans and our health insurance plan a tremendous amount of money. But we figured we would at least take another stab at it. Although we feel like our original proposal was by far the best. So our new proposal or counter is sick leave will not be charged if employee needs to attend a scheduled appointment at an employee well care center or a virtual appointment. The time allotted for this shall not exceed 3 hours per year per employee. Absences under the section must be approved 24 hours in advance. Administration will work with Marathon Health Clinics to reserve slots for teacher appointments between the hours of 3 and the close of the day. So we pared that down. But 1 hour was not cutting it. I mean, it's just, 1 hour was not enough time for most teachers to get to a well care center and potentially back and have their appointment as well. So we feel like 3 is a more reasonable number, under our proposal. I guess if you are a teacher at ESF, you might be able to use this a few times, but if you're at one of our beachside schools, you're probably only going to be able to use this once per year to get to a well care center. Any questions on that?
No.
Okay. All right. So that was the last one.
We had one that you were sitting with related to Article 6. It was the language that we had offered a new proposal related to special procedures for termination charges.
Yes. Yeah, we had rejected that proposal.
No, we just
And-
offered it last time. It was new language we put across last time at the table.
Is this, okay, tell me what you're talking about. The fair
So Article
employment.
6, under fair employment, we had
Yeah, okay,
original,
so you elaborated on it last time, right?
we wrote new language for it. We added
Yeah.
a new section, and your one question was, at what point does the board vote? That was your one question about this language. And you asked us what we were trying to do. And we said we were trying to clarify those unique circumstances that we'd had recently over the last couple of years since you added the language terminated and where they could go, upon termination. And so we were clarifying, you get one choice, you don't get multiple choices, which is what we said when we originally talked about this language and brought it into the contract. You had to pick, are you going to go to DOA? Are you going to do a board hearing? Are you going to do the arbitration? And so we were trying to clarify that language. And the answer to the question, when does the board vote? And I think let me back up a second. I think one of the comments that was made last time was that a union attorney cannot get involved until board action. And I had brought a couple of examples where that wasn't the case, because they get involved when the superintendent sends a letter saying to the employee, I'm recommending termination. And you have 5 days to ask for a meeting for me. And that's when the FAA attorneys, in my experience over the last couple of years, have been involved. They've attended that first meeting, and at least on one occasion, maybe on 2 occasions, they asked for a second meeting before the 15 days where they could ask for the board hearing came about. So the answer to the question under this new language, where does the board's vote come in? The letters, the employee has 15 days to ask for one of these options. Still, previous and under this language, the board doesn't vote till after that 15 days. And so what they would be voting on this particular time with this language is scheduling the hearing with one of the entities that were selected, either the board hearing, the DOA, or approving the hearing of the arbitrator.
So if I may,
Dr. Green, do you have that language accessible? I don't have it because it was in a separate proposal.
Anthony, I had a question if you want to entertain it.
Let me see if I can find, and I can listen while I'm searching.
Kyle, where'd you go? Go ahead.
So Dr. Green, currently, I believe the board votes, and then the employee has the opportunity to choose which avenue that they would take to challenge the board decision, correct? That's current policy?
But currently, no. Well, that's what we're trying to clarify, because it's happened a couple of different ways. But the procedure and the state information is you get a letter, and within 5 days or 15 days of receipt of that letter, the employee can ask for a meeting with the superintendent, and within 15 days, a hearing before the board. That's what this, and we had added termination into the language a couple times ago so that the employee could pick more than just the hearing before the board. They could go to arbitration.
Dr. Green, I think what we're trying to...
The board action comes after the 15 days.
Dr. Green, I think what we're trying to figure out is the difference between what we're currently doing and what would change under this practice, because currently, I believe the superintendent makes a recommendation for termination. You have 5 days to go talk to the superintendent, and then it usually gets put on the board agenda, and then the board takes action. After the board takes action to terminate, then that's when that teacher does the challenge, right?
No, that's not what has been currently happening. Again, the board item is after the 15-day time period that the employee has an option to ask for a hearing. And let me go back and say, I must not be saying it clearly. We used to not have termination as an option for arbitration. We used to, that word terminated was out of that clause, if you remember. 2 sessions ago in bargaining, we added it through the negotiated process. We added that word termination. At the table, we said, but you don't get to have 2 different hearings. You have to pick which. You either are going to have a DOA or a board hearing, whichever way, or an arbitration. You can't pick both. That was what was discussed at the table. But most recently, there was first a request for a board hearing, and then after the board voted, there was a request for arbitration. We are trying to clarify and streamline that language.
Dr. Green, I think you're confusing the board hearing a little bit, because the action item for the board to terminate an employee, because an employee is not terminated until the board takes action. So that action is not the board hearing that I think you're referring to. The employee has an option to request a legislative board hearing where I think 3 board members are chosen in a process. The challenge, I believe, that board decision.
That's correct.
I believe what BPS is trying to accomplish is so that they could avoid going to the board more than once. I think what you're trying to say is if you're going to arbitrate it, we're not even going to take it to the board yet. We're going to wait for arbitration.
So first off, not everybody's allowed to go to arbitration. State statute, I believe, and I could have this backward, but I believe state statute only allows PSC teachers to go to arbitration, not
Yep.
AC teachers.
I
Is that
thought it
correct,
was-
Anthony? Or is it
I
vice
thought
versa?
They could go to a DOA hearing or one of the hearings is only for PSCs. You
Okay,
were-
whichever way, one.
yeah.
So again, we're not trying to take away board action. And if I remember correctly, it was the last situation that we had that it was BFT that said, well, we're not going to go that route. The board has already voted. We're going to go the route that we think we have a chance with. So again, we're trying to clarify because at the table a couple of times ago, it was, you get to pick. And we're just trying to lay out the process by which that happens.
Dr.
Okay,
Green,
so-
I'll just follow up with this really quick. It sounds to me that what's trying to occur is you're trying to make the teacher pick before the board takes any action. And I think the board's responsibility is to terminate an employee. Like if the board's not willing to terminate the employee, I don't think the employee should have to challenge the termination. But I'll just end it there. Thank you.
I don't, so what I think I hear you saying, Dr. Green, is you feel like our attorneys are trying to game the system by having 2 cracks at it.
All I'm trying to do is clarify
Well,
the
I mean,
process to get to a
let's
hearing.
just-
I'm not saying anybody's doing anything wrong.
No, but like, I think if we could figure out what the concerns are better, we could maybe get to a resolution. Because no, I understand what you're saying. It's like, okay, you have the right to challenge this. Tell us how you're going to challenge it. Are you going to challenge it with the hearing in front of the board? Or are you going to take it to arbitration? Is it going to be a hearing? So, but my concern is, come on, 15 days. Like, and I'm not sure if there's a way around that because of the timeline with the meeting with the superintendent. Possibly there is, but not to be rude. No, we think you do a fantastic job, but there's times we can't get an email reply from you for 2 weeks. So it's quite the stretch to have an attorney, making that decision in 14 days. So
That's the statute though. The statute is you have 5 days to ask for a meeting and 15 days to ask for something else. That's in the statute.
what statute is that in?
Hang on, I'll pull a letter.
It's in state
Okay.
statute.
It's in state
is.
statute.
That they have
But I-
15 days to
Yes.
decide.
And it's in the letter when it's presented to them.
So then, wait, go back to it. So what's the concern? If it's in state statute, why are we not just following the state statute?
Again, there was a reason that you all wanted termination in the language. We agreed to do that through the negotiated process. We agreed to add that word to your arbitration language.
Completely get that part. All
Okay.
right, we're good.
We also said at that time, you could have one or the other, not both. It has been very confusing. And let's be clear, this doesn't happen, often,
Right.
but
Yeah.
the last several times, it's been very confusing as to the procedure to get from recommendation to hearing and what kind. And at least in the last one, there was a change midstream. Like, I'm requesting within my 15 days that I want a hearing. And then after that, it was, oh no, I don't want a hearing because there's already been a vote. I want to go a different route.
Dr. Green, that's a little not on your timeline. I get what you're saying, but that's not what happened because the days obviously are spelled out in state statute. So you have to make a request. So in other words, we were forced to make a request or give up that choice before we even knew what the board might do. And so let's not, like, I think the situation is being misrepresented. Obviously, I don't want to go into it full-fledged, but the situation you're presenting is being misrepresented. The reason why a request was made in that case was because we would run out of time, and then that option would have no longer been an option at all, and then we would have been forced into another one. It wasn't that we were just sitting there trying to hedge our bets and, ooh, we're going to pick this one, but no, we're going to pick that one. If we're held to state statute, which we are, then those days were going to run out, and we wouldn't have been able to use that option should it have been the one that needed to be used.
That's why
So
we're
I
trying
just-
to clarify the process.
I don't think that, but I don't think your clarification is actually going to be most beneficial for the terminated employee. And at the end of the day, we've got to do what's best for what we think is right for the teacher who may be unjustifiably being terminated.
Well, I'll find that language, Anthony, and send it over.
Okay, yeah, I got, because then I don't have the proposal in front of me either. So I gotta sit down and look at that.
So you'll send me all of yours as well?
Yes. All right, and so do you want to caucus for a while?
Yes.
Okay, so what time do you want to reconvene?
Let's check in about 30 minutes just to see where we are.
Okay, all right, so I will
And my
send that
team,
over.
we're going over to Zoom, to Teams. So I'm leaving.
Okay,